Welcome to this episode of Learning Fusion. In today's episode, we're going to be covering path animation. So let's roll this intro and let's get into it.
We're learning Fusion together. We'll learn 2D stuff and 3D stuff and particle stuff and compositing stuff, deep pixel stuff and tracking stuff, but not other stuff, but some other cool stuff, because we're learning Fusion together.
So the past few episodes, we covered our keyframe editor here. We covered our spline editor here. And today we're going to be talking about the third element of animation, which is the path editor. And what the path editor is it allows you to animate the displacement on the XY or the XY pivot. So quick example, if I take my little ellipse here and on our XY center here, I'm going to change it. And then we're going to go to the end and I'm going to change my location to create another keyframe. And what it did is it created a path. So this path is the path of our animation. So if I push play, you can see it's playing along our path. And in this basic form, this path itself that's automatically created when we animate anything within our little nodes here is going to be editable. So we can edit that. We can edit that. We can change our path. And so now our path is changed. So that is the most basic way that you create a path. It's just automatically created when you change your keyframes. So we can come in here and we can add keyframes if we want, alter our path up, and change it how we want. Additionally, we can go to our little spline editor here, and if we turn this on, we can see our path right here. So we could come in here, we could select everything and smooth it out even more if we want. So now our path is nice and smooth. Now, not everything is animated on a path. So if we have things that are just values, so for example, our width, our height, our angle, these are just values. These aren't able to be animated on a path. Well, they are and they aren't. I will show you here in a little while. But in general, they're not. So, for example, if I go here and I select our color and I keyframe our color up, go to the end and we can change our color. So now we do have animation on our color, but that's not necessarily a path animation. That's just changing our values there. So that is the most basic form of creating a path. So whatever we animated our lips here. It created a path when we created keyframes. Now we can also create our own paths separate from our actual shapes. So let's go ahead and delete this little blue ellipse. Let's create a new one here. And I'm going to input it. And let's shrink our size down. We're just going to move it off to the side over here. So to create a path on its own, I could select this polyline or the B-spline here, but I'm going to select our polyline. And we're going to look at our polyline. And on our Polygon node, all I have to do is create a little path here. And I can go here, I can select it all out and we can smooth it. So we've got a little path here. Now, in order to assign this path to something like our ellipse, there's a few things we need to do. So while we're selected on our polygon here, we need to go over here to our little inspector. And right here, it says right click here for shape animation. The first thing we want to do is we want to right click and we want to remove any animation that was automatically written there because we don't want any animation. And by default, our polygon line created a little keyframe there. So we want to first get rid of that. So we're going to select this remove polygon 1 polyline. So we just removed all the animation. Next thing we want to do is, because we don't want to connect this up anywhere, we want this published so this data is available for any node we need to use. So to do that, we need to right click back on this right click here for animation, and we need to select publish. So now our little polygon data is published. So if I go to our ellipse here, and let's look at our ellipse, I want to animate our center location. So the first thing I need to do is tell it I want to animate it on a path. So on our center, I need to right click and select path. And as soon as I select path, it created this modifier. So if I go to modifiers here, you can see we've got a little path 1 modifier. And again, we automatically created a little animation here. And if we just click that to delete that animation, we don't have any animation. So if we play, we see nothing is happening. So we need to assign that path to this ellipse. And to be able to do that, we go here to this right click here for shape animation. We right click, we can go to connect to polyline 1 and select value. So now it just assigned this ellipse to our little path we created on this polyline right here. And if I go back to modifiers and double click on our path 1 here, this displacement is what's going to animate along our path. So remember we talked the other day about 0 being the beginning of our displacement and 1 being the end. That's this displacement slider right here. So 0 being the beginning, 1 being the end. So we can animate along this path however we want. So I can go to the beginning, create a keyframe. I can go to the end, change my displacement. So I have another keyframe. Now if I push play, it's animating along our path. And if I need to, I can come in here and change my animation however I need to change it. Now, a good practice to get into, if we're doing all these little separate nodes that are sticking out like around wherever, especially if we're going to have multiple ones, we want to start using underlays. If you remember right, when we were talking about a little organization, we were talking about underlays. So let's go ahead and throw our little path here into underlay. So I'm just going to highlight over it, shift space, underlay, and we're going to create a little underlay for our path. And let's go ahead and rename that to paths. And there we go. We've got a little underlay with our paths in it. Now we can do the same thing with a B-spline. So for ease, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this so it's no longer assigned to a path. Let's get a nice clean one here, input it. Let's move it off to the side here. So I'm going to select our B-spline, and on our B-spline, I'm just going to create another nice little path. And for good measure, when you're done, to make sure that doesn't accidentally close off, we can just select this little insert and modify button. So now we can go to our B-spline, go back to our inspector here, right click, remove B-spline polyline 1, right click and select publish. Now we can take our little B-spline and let's throw it in an underlay. We can go to our ellipse here, right click our center and use path. And once we do, it's created this little modifier for us. And we go down here, get rid of that keyframe, right click, connect to. Now we've got our B-spline polyline here and select value. So now it's connected to that. And of course it's not playing because we need to go back to our little path here. And this is our displacement for that path. So I can now keyframe it, go to the end, add a new keyframe. And now I push play. We see it's animated along our path. And again, I can go to our B-spline and I can edit any of the stuff that I need. And we're good to go. So it is now animated. So let's go ahead and refresh this again. Get a nice new one. And we're going to insert it. Now, speaking of ellipses, unfortunately, we can't use our little square or our rectangle and our ellipse as paths. So to be able to create perfect circles or rectangles, there's a different way to do this. So let's go ahead and bring in another polyline, and I'm going to rename this to circle path, so we know what it is. Now, when we have our little circle path selected, I can just go on my display up here without drawing anything in. I can right click and I can go to polyline, go to create, and I can create an ellipse, a rectangle, or an arrow. So if I create an ellipse, I have this little value slider up here that'll let me change the size. So I can say 0.5 tab 0.5. And as soon as I do, it's going to create a circle. And what it did is it created where I right clicked. So that's why our circle is way up here. But we can always just select everything, and we can just, we can select everything, and we can move our circle to where we want it. So now we've got our little circle there. And this is going to operate exactly like our little polygon path did. So if we go here, right click, remove our little polygon line, right click, select publish. Now I can go to our little ellipse here, right click, select path. Now we've got our modifier up here, and let's go delete that first keyframe. If I right click, connect to, now we've got our circle path polyline, and I'm going to connect it to value. And the same on this one. If I go to our path, our displacement is what tells it where to go along that path. So I can keyframe it, go to the end, change it, and now we've got our little circle animated on our circle. And you notice it just goes around once, and of course it's looping. But if we want it to continue to go around in a loop, if you remember right the other day, on our spline editor, if we go ahead and select this, select our ellipse, we've got that displacement right there. So that's the displacement along our path. So what we can do is I can fit this, select it all, and actually let's go ahead and change this time first on this keyframe. So we're going to bring this over so it's faster. Then we can select both these keyframes, select our loop down here, and there we go. And we can adjust this top keyframe to change our loop. But now if we play, you can see it's looping. And it is going kind of fast, but you can do all kinds of fun stuff with it, something like this. So we could go here, shift space. We can add a trails node there. On our trails node, I can change our blur size up, change our gain. So now we've got it blurring. And I can even offset on the X so it's moving. If I want to offset on the Y, it'll make it look like it's kind of going off in the distance. So there we go. We created that animation just with our little circle path and our ellipse and a trails node. So let's go ahead and reset all this. And the same goes with our square. If we wanted to create a rectangle, we would right click and create a rectangle. And let's actually get a nice fresh one. And let's go ahead and move that back. Now, another way to create our little paths is to create XY paths. So if I go over here to the center of our ellipse, so we're selected on our ellipse, and I've got our center, I can right click on our center, I can select modify with, and I can select this XY path. So I'm going to select XY, and if I go to my spline editor and turn on my ellipse, you notice now we have XY coordinates. So in here, I can go to the end, I can animate my Y location, I can animate my little X location there. So now we've got it animated on the X and the Y. And we can select all these. We can select all these, smooth them out. So now it's nice and smooth. And again, we can go here and we can modify our little path however we want. But now we're operating on the X and Y. And if you like to always work this way on your X and Y, we go to our fusion settings and we go to our defaults right here. And if we select our point width, we can select XY path, and it'll always create that XY path when we create displacement splines. Now, before I mentioned how XY paths and our paths are really only meant for XY location and everything, but we actually can use that displacement data for other things. So for example, if I say grab some footage, bring a footage up, and I say add a color corrector here, go here, and we can select maybe our little B-spline. Here you notice our little path is going kind of crazy. But if I go to our color corrector and go to our saturation, or let's go to hue. Go to hue, connect to. So that means we need an actual ellipse connected. So let's go ahead and remove this. Let's add a new one. And let's go to our little ellipse here. And I'm going to select path. Go to our modifiers. Let's delete that. Let's go to our first keyframe there. Connect to, I'm going to connect to our B-spline value because that's what we wanted. And then of course we need to keyframe our little modifier here. So there in the beginning, let's go to the end. Let's change our displacement. So now our displacement is changing on our little ellipse there. So now I can go to our color corrector. And if I right click on hue, I can say connect to path 1 displacement. So now it's going to change depending on the displacement of that little ellipse. So if I push play, you can see our hue is changing with the value of our path, which is attached to this ellipse center. So if you need to animate things differently, like on a path or with timing or with wave type stuff, this is a good way to do it. You can just attach it to that little ellipse that's on a path. So let's go ahead and delete this stuff. And let's go back to our little ellipse here, and let's actually change the size of this. So now we've got our animation back. Now, sometimes you're going to hear a lot of stuff about compound paths or compound animation. And within Fusion, all that really means is if we go to our ellipse and we go to our modifiers, if we look at our little path here, we can change the size of our path. So we can change the size. We can change the center. We can change the X to Y rotation if we want. So if we add any changes on top of our displacement animation that's going on, this is what's considered compound animation. So technically I could select this, and when I do, it's going to do something weird, but I'm going to select this. You notice it just popped that up. But if I double click back in our path, you can see our animation there. So I've got a keyframe. If I go to the end, I can change the location of that so it stays in shot. So now if I play, we have our animation on our path, and we've got our actual path being animated. So that's just compound animation. Nothing confusing. That's all it is. So let's go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to talk about one other way we can add animation, and that's with the paint node. So let's go ahead and connect our ellipse back up, shrink this down, move it off to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and add a paint node. Let's bring in a background so we can see our paint. On our paint node, I'm just going to select single stroke here. and paint a little line. If I go here, select a stroke, go to stroke controls, select make editable, I can right click here and I can publish this stroke. So now if I go to our ellipse, I can right click, select path. If I go to our modifiers and make sure we're on the first one, remove our keyframe, right click, connect to stroke 1 polyline value. Now it's connected to the paint stroke we just created. So if I go to our modifiers and create a keyframe, go to the end, change our displacement. Now it's animated along our little paint stroke there. So one thing is if you notice, well, you probably don't notice, but if I change our height of our little ellipse there and then push play, it's just animated in the same direction. Nothing's happening. So if I wanted this to always point towards the direction of the line, I could. So if I go here and I right click on this angle, I can select connect to path 1 heading. Now it's going to go in the direction of my line. So if I push play, now you can see our little ellipse there is playing in the direction of our line. And if I go back here and I go to modifiers, this is what this heading offset is for. So I can change that heading offset if I want to. So if I push play and I always want it to be at kind of an angle, I can change that. Or I can animate it to make it look like there's inertia around my curves. You get what I'm saying. But that's what this heading offset is for. So let's move our little paint stuff into our paths area over here. And let's get a nice clean one so we can go over some of these right click options. And I'm going to shrink it down. Make sure we're at the beginning. Bring it over. And create a little path. So there we go. We got a basic path. Now, if I right click in here, just watch what you're right clicking on because the menu system is going to change. So if I right click on our ellipse, we're getting stuff for a ellipse down here. And I'm talking mainly down here. So we have the ability to change stuff on our effect mask for ellipse, our stroke, our ellipse center, and our polyline. And if I just click on our line, we're mainly worried about our little polyline options over here. So let's go ahead and select our little polyline here. So right here, these are fairly important. So click to append is just going to allow us to append that little path. Or we can draw append. Insert and modify was the default. So I can add another point if I want, or I can modify an existing point. If I have it on modify only, I'm only going to be able to modify existing points. I'm not going to be able to accidentally add a point. Or I can select this done. So if I'm all done with my path and I want to make sure I don't mess anything up, I can select done. And now I can't select anything on that to modify that path. Additionally, under our path 1 polyline, we can select close to close it off. And if I select my points, we can copy our path to points, copy the path value, cut the path points, paste path points, or paste with offset. We can also delete points. This is our lock points that we covered the other day. Our lock point pairs, which is the same as our lock points. We can edit a point, and this is going to come up with a pop-up. So if I select this point, go to polyline and select edit point. Now I can individually edit that point by a number. So I can just put in a 0.8 if I want. I can also change it to linear, smooth. I can smooth on my points using the default or that dialog we covered the other day. I can change it to ease in, ease out. This is where we created our ellipse, rectangular, arrow. I can change this from a Bezier to a B-Spline, but just be careful when you do this. If you accidentally create a B-Spline and you go back to create a Bezier from a B-Spline, sometimes it takes all your points away. I can also convert it to a XY path if I want. This shape box is only going to work if I have it on different levels. So for example, I need this down here so I actually have some depth on my points. And if I right click, go to my polyline and select shape box, I obviously didn't select all my points. Select polyline, select shape box. I'm going to get a shape box from all my points. So now I can come up here and I can manipulate my points using this box however I want. And to get rid of it, you just right click again, go to polyline and turn it off. Under draw style, we can just change the style of our line from a solid to dash to a null. We can change a custom spline or key point or handle colors if we want. So if we don't like that red and yellow it always is, we can change these colors. We can show our point numbers, which is going to show our 0 and 1, which is our displacement location. Remember, we start at 0. So our 0 right here, and our 1 being our little endpoint right here. So we can display which one is our beginning and end. Or we can turn them off. And I'm going to skip these, but we can show our key point, show our handles, or show our tagged point IDs. I'm going to skip roto assist. We'll cover that when we cover roto assist. And then down here, we can import different paths from Lightwave. We can import a motion path, our shape paths, and we can import different stuff from Nuke, stuff from Silhouette, and so on. Now, as far as importing and exporting our little splines, we could, if we like this spline here and we knew we were going to be using it multiple times throughout this project or different projects, we could technically export that. So if I right click on the node, I go to settings, I can select save as. It's going to save it as a .setting. So I could save this as B-Spline 1 or rename it if I want, hit save. So now if I brought in another B-Spline, I can right click, go to settings, and my last one I just created is automatically going to show up, but those will disappear if you open a new project. So I can select load and go load B-Spline 1. So now that is the same spline as this spline. So it's exactly the same. You're just loading that shape path back in. And if you ever need to change paths, so right now our little ellipse is on that. We can just double click that to clear all that stuff out. Again, right click, select path. And if I go to our modifiers, let's get rid of our keyframe. Right click, connect to, and I can reconnect to whatever one I want. So if I want B-Spline 1 value, now it's reconnected to our B-Spline 1 value. And of course, I have to go to our path, create a keyframe, go to the end, another keyframe. Now we've got it animated. So that is using paths to animate in Fusion. In the next series, I'm going to kind of cover all what we've learned in one animation episode. So we're going to be animating on paths, using the spline editor, using keyframes so we can create some cool stuff. So I will see you in the next episode.